Hey, Quinn Police Motor Training. So today we are in Lebanon, Tennessee, and here is the course that we have out here. So here's the start. Now these are 10 feet apart. So no, it's simple. This is one of those things I like to say. It's simple, but it's not easy. This is simple, but it is not easy. I kept clipping this second cone, but because I was able to get out here and run this thing about 708 times, I was able to see that what I was really doing wrong in my initial run into this thing is I was coming kind of too tight to this first one, and I wasn't swinging out enough, and I kept clipping number 2. So now you don't want to clip number 2. So now when I go through here, I'm exaggerating the hell out of it. I'm coming way out here, so I come in way more at an angle into this shot, which even when I do this now aggressively, so the rhythm feels the same. I'm just setting up a little bit wider, but the rhythm is the same. So it's not affecting my process. I'm just starting from a different point, which is really useful because it does my timing is not having to be messed with, where I have to sort of rethink that. I just go, okay, go really wide on the first drop, and now everything else is the same. And so now when I do all the same maneuvers and I go nice and sharp and quick through here, I don't clip number 2. The way they set this up is, again, it's deceptive, but once you finish this cone here, you have to really swing out to get around that 3 cone there. So these are just really exaggerated. You can see a lot of grind marks. So my wheel placement is somewhere right about here to get through this, because these are just really narrow. Same thing over here, nice, and you got to go really, really deep and make your U-turn over there, drop back in here. Nova had one like that, and so the fastest line in some cases was actually making a circle and dropping back in the next section. I think it was even closer than this. So Mike Bird, damn you. So all right, you come through here. Now we're shooting into this thing, and if you notice, you see this cone here, it's kind of sticking out a little bit. If you were to take this as a straight line, that cone is begging for your crash bar. So what I've started doing is coming in a little left and taking it straight through here so that I miss that altogether, but this is my reference, that I just drive straight in here and I really don't even generate a turning movement until I get about here. Then I turn. But the nice thing is these things are not in my way, and I really don't need to turn. If I line up to the left side over here, or the right side from your vantage point, I don't run into a problem to just take this whole thing straight. So now it's sort of stupid simple. So then I'll bang this nice and tight. I'll try to hug this outside line, because this part gets tricky. Right here, you run into these 3 cones. You have to dive in, but you're gonna hit this cone. How do I know? So you really want to hug this thing as much as you can and just either tickle that base or just miss it. And then deep, 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 deep. You want to come in deep somewhere in here and try to miss that tape. Here, we're going to miss this tape altogether. Watch. Look at that. Oh. All right. We've missed the tape. So we're going to go deep over here, shallow, 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 get as close as we can, because here is our exit into that next pattern right here, right? So the further over here I am, the longer it's going to take me. It's going to slow me down coming out, and it's going to slow me down dropping in. So I want as straight a little chicane as I can get, and that means I got to go deep, deep, deep over here. So then I come through here, grippy surface, which is nice. And now we're kind of coming in at an angle at speed, which is great. So we drop in here, I'm trailing in on the brakes, dropping in and just coming nice and deep. I kept trying to take this shallow because I was getting greedy, and then I would just clip these. So not great. So come in deep. This pattern, I've been trying in every which way I can to cheat it, and I can't cheat it. So you just got to run I'm just going to run the edges. That's what I'm going to do to get through. So you come through here nice and deep, deep, deep. Then you cut across, and same thing. Now you make a clockwise. Same thing though. I was cutting across and trying not to make a jog into here, just see if I could carry enough speed, hammer the brakes, and start my turning movement from here, and I couldn't do it. I kept hitting these, and I probably got it once or twice here or there, but it's just not worth it. It's that juice is not worth the squeeze. So I am dropping in here, taking a little jog over, and then I'm going to go deep, 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 deep. When in doubt, run the outside cones. Just run the ridges of these patterns, you know, because especially like this event is 1 second if you rub, 1 second if you knock a cone down, and that's a pretty liberal penalty, not bad at all. However, it's a 5-second bonus if you run this thing clean. So let's run clean, right? Let's run clean. As I always say, if you run clean, the one thing I know about your run is that you could have gone faster, right? Nobody goes the fastest they've ever gone on a clean run. They were using their noggin and going careful because they knew the chess game of this thing. So just thinking about that. So once you finish your clockwise here, then you run across again, and it's a counterclockwise. Again, run nice and deep. Now you're going to end up over here to get out of here. So the further I can get over here, because I'm going to be coming out that way, the better. However, like I said, you kind of got to run the edges here. So I try and just run as wide over here as I can and keep it shallow there so I get as straight a line through. Is it straight? No. But, you know, it's the best. You do what you can do, right? So this is pretty cool. So just look at this line here. See how this goes straight into that next pattern? Well, your first turning movement in that next pattern is all the way at the back, that back right orange cone. So you can really rip into that next pattern. This course is fast. It has some very fast sections. I mean, I'm locking the bike up everywhere, sliding around. It's pretty exciting, to say the least. So I won't bore you too much with this one. It's a pretty straightforward pattern. It's pretty cool though, it's fast. So you're diving over that outside cone, ripping down the outside, cutting around this corner, shooting through the middle again, and then you're making a counterclockwise, running the edge again, counterclockwise. So it's a figure eight, basically, a big figure eight. And then once you finish this last one, you're just shooting through this tight figure eight, these little V's here, and then out. And you see that 90 right? You're going all the way down to that thing. So think about how fast that is. I mean, this girl's eating, you know? Now the tricky part for me with this, I'm trying to come in here nice and hot, but when I'm on the brakes hard, you can see this stuff, I don't want to be on here, but it's kind of right in the line I want. So what I've been doing here is when I drive down here, once I get out of this chute, where this arrow is, I'm pulling my bike over the line, over this crack. And this is where I'm doing all my hard braking right here. Hammer the brakes, hammer the brakes, hammer the brakes. The problem is, or the challenge is, not a lot of other people are doing that. So this is where the debris starts to collect. So I have to be careful. But what it does do is it gives me hard braking, not on all this dirt and crack. And it also sets me up for a better position, because now I start tipping in from here instead of here. So I have an extra foot or so of space to avoid that inside cone. So I'm hammering the brakes hard, and then just dropping in 90 right, 90 left up there. And I'm not going to walk you all the way down there, but that is the 30 cone weave. But they're not using a radar or LiDAR to determine your speed. They're just saying, well, that's the 30 cone weave. Go through it as fast or as slow as you want. So what I'm trying to do is, when I come out of this little chute over here, I'm just pinning it full throttle, first gear, click second, and then somewhere around the first drop in, I'm hammering the brakes and setting my speed around 32 to 35, and I finish that at 32 or 35. I don't want to come blitzing out of it, because we're making a sharp left into some far cones down there, which create a 90 left. And now this is the 40 decel. So you're ripping down here, going through the 30, then you're turning your bike around and you're ripping down here. And this is the 40. And any of you that have, any of you instructors out there that have taught motor school on an ABS bike, you're probably able to do the 40 at around 50 plus something, safely and comfortably. So what do you think at a competition, if you're trying to win the damn thing, and they say, okay, well, this is the 40 and you can come into it however fast you think you can come into it. So I came into it at 60, but that's great. You could come into it at 1,000 miles an hour. The problem isn't going fast into the chute. The problem is what we have coming up afterwards. So after you blast in here into the 40, you're hammering your brakes in these cones, because immediately following that, you come into this. So this is one of the things we talked about while we were setting, well, I wasn't, but while they were setting the course up, I contributed a thought of, let's make a tight, slow pattern following the 40, because that's the mind screw, right? Is you're going really, really fast, and now you got to go really, really slow and tight. So you're hammering your brakes. Basically, I'm training my brakes all the way in here, and you have to cut the middle cones. So you dive right in here, you turn, and then you do this figure 8 right in here. So you're diving, split in the middle, figure 8, and then you come out, and again, you can see I'm racing all the way to the back end of that pattern. So there's a lot of hard braking, hard accelerating. This course is fast, but it's really tricky in the way that you have to manage your speed. If you're one of those people that want to stay in the friction zone and just kind of cruise around, you're going to get smoked out here. This course, on average, is a mid to high 3s, low 4s, depending on who's running it. That's a lot of time out here, and with all that space that you have out there, you're going to want to let that clutch out and get that girl to eat a little bit. So you shoot through here. Now again, you're coming into this pattern just hauling. So you can also see why coming here early and allowing yourself to get a lot of runs is good, because you get 50 people on this course at the same time, and there's just not enough space for you to get a rhythm and really blitz this course one after the next as far as patterns go. So we dive in here, make a nice left. For me, I want to go deep, but what's really helping me a lot is I'm coming through here really, really hard, and then I have a video on it, it's preloading the front, where I'm basically, as soon as I start rolling off the throttle, I'm throwing myself up over the bike a bit, my butt's off the seat, and then I'm driving my knees into the front of the bike so I can really get on the brakes hard, hard, hard. And that loads the front, but it gets rid of that little gap in time where I'm going from accelerating, meaning that I've got weight transfer to the back of the bike, and then I have to get on the brakes, and really I can't get on too hard because I got to wait for the front to get loaded. I need that weight transfer to move forward, so I preemptively load it with my body, just that split second that allows me. So as you guys know, when you get on the brakes, more, and you can get on them harder and harder over time because you have more and more load from the weight transfer. Well, I want to get on them really, really hard right away, and if I just grabbed a handful like a panic brake, the front wouldn't be properly loaded, and I would just go into ABS or front wheel lock skid. So I want to be able to get traction right away and load that front tire. So I throw my body up forward, and I'm right on the brakes right away. So I'm off throttle. The way I describe it in my video is when you're sitting and you're rolling off the throttle, imagine there's a tight string to your butt, and as soon as you start rolling off the throttle, it lifts you up and moves you up over the front of the bike right away. So and if you're overlapping controls, I'm going straight from full throttle to hard threshold braking, like right away, and that allows me to come in harder, stay on the throttle a little longer. But then the other real big benefit, this is a pretty tight turn, and the bigger the radius you carry, the harder you're going to have, harder time you're going to have dropping into that. This is called the head and shoulders. So you're coming in here, and you got to make a left-hand U-turn, and then you're dropping right in here. What a lot of people are doing is they're hitting this cone on the way in and this cone on the way out, and that's nothing new. But when I come in here really, really loaded, the suspension is loaded, yes, I'm coming in faster and harder, but what it's also doing is it's giving me much more rake and trail benefit, where the bike's just racier, it's a little steeper. So instead of being choppered out, now I have slow steering, and it'll turn a wider radius. I'm more cranked down like that when the bike comes in, and man, it just knifes through here, and it gives me a lot more room. It puts me more over here, and it makes this drop in just so much easier, because it's like the benefits are just so many that make it almost feels like a cheat coming in here, but it makes this pattern feel about 50% easier and bigger. So I drop into here, I want to stay kind of wide, stay over here. Now here, want to go deep. Again, we don't want to cheat ourselves, because coming out is going to be tricky. So if we try to cut this thing tight and we put ourselves over here, all of you guys know that's the wrong answer. So obviously on the way out, I want to be as far over here as I can, so I have a good line coming out of here. Well, how are we going to do that? And this is where we talk about deconstructing a pattern. If you know where you want to go, you just work backwards and figure out, well, where do I need to be? So I know I want to be somewhere over here coming out. Well, how am I going to get here? Well, I got to work backwards. And ultimately working backwards, if that's 12 o'clock, 1, 2, 3, depending on who you ask, some of the quicker guys, 3 o'clock's where they're about setting up. So that's putting them, remember, if you're at 3 o'clock, starting your turn really tight, you're pushing yourself that way. Well, that's good. Now, if you're 12 o'clock, what you've also done is you've given yourself more room this way to give the bike time to move over that way. So kind of 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. I like to split the difference between those two, and I'm at about 2 o'clock. So when I drop in here, I'm looking for about this spot right here, because that gives me distance this way and it gives me distance that way, a little bit of each. That way, when I finish at the 2 o'clock position, I'm a little bit over here and I'm a little bit further this way to give myself more time. So I get a nice line coming out of here. It's a 5-second bonus for a clean run. So that's good. This is quick, just quick. This chute coming out is tricky. So sometimes, again, the fastest line isn't the safest line. And when it's game day, you want to be safe more than you want to be fast. You want both, right? But so coming out of here, I'm swinging this way as much as I can. But when I'm coming out, I'm still squirting out that way, even though I want to go over there. So the best line would be to just carry a radius, but I'm too nervous about clipping this thing. So to play it safe, when I come out of here, I straighten up a little and squirt forward just a little bit. It's, you know, what is it, maybe a tenth of a second, if that, but it's safer. So I come out here, I do a little squirt, stand the bike up, squirt, then I turn over here, and as you can see, you can take a pretty straight line. I don't have to hit it straight on in line with those cones, right? I'm taking it somewhere about here. That's a pretty wide opening. So because I did that little squirt, it puts me a little further this way than I'd like to get a beautiful shot out of here. But the good news is I can still take this from about here, which is a little off center, and still get through here clean. Drop in here, go deep, because we're going to go into another mess here. But anyways, go deep here. These are really big. So I've found that other than trying when I'm in there to try to kind of maneuver myself toward an edge one way or the other, I don't really worry about it. You can kind of just jump in here and do what you need to do. But coming into this next pattern, the tricky part here, this is a figure 8. And you got to take the right one first. The tricky part here is, while this looks somewhat liberal in space, we don't want to hit the base. So although you're looking at this saying, hey, that's a lot of room from here to here, it is. But you don't really practically have that, because I have such a big damn base here. And this base, especially with the water on it, it's really slick. How do I know it's slick? Because my bike has tasted some pavement 3 times at this event, because my front tire decided to taste the base there. We don't want that. So basically, meaning that your line is here. Well, look how much further away that line is from the actual cone. It's a lot further away, meaning that you're getting pushed into that cone a lot more than it visually appears. So when I come through here, I basically have to just slow down. I get my wheel right up to that base and I stand the bike up a little bit. So I'm road racing it a little. So we talk about counterbalance. If I'm going to the right, I'm countering the drop, right? Well, what we're doing is we're trading, right? I'm trading my body and my center line. As the bike falls over, I'm moving to the outside, gives the bike a slower and more controlled drop, but it also allows it to go further. Well, I don't want it to go further because I'm going to just start clearing all these cones out. So what do I do instead of that is just the opposite. It's the reason road racers move their body center line to the inside, so they can keep the bike more straight up. The more straight up the bike is, A, we're not going to drag hard parts, and B, we can get on more hard throttle because the tires aren't living on the edge where you're not going to get traction. You want to stand the bike up and you can really get throttle going. So that's why they will move their weight to the inside. Well, so for that purpose, as it comes to this, I want to do that because it'll stand my, rather than being over like this, I'm more upright. The odds of my saddlebags clipping these are far less. And if these weren't bases, like if these were just cones like those, it wouldn't be an issue, because if this were right here, it'd be, you know, the base would be somewhere like this. I mean, I'd have probably 5 or 6 more inches of space, which would really be significant, but you don't have that. So my bike's more stood up. I'm kind of rolling in a little off and slowing down. Now here, I just want to go really deep, because I'm going to be coming out, dropping into that. And this is a counterclockwise into a counterclockwise. So the further over here I can get, if I can just shoot in and drop into that counterclockwise, the better. Obviously, the more over here, I'm going to have to take a little jog, and I want to avoid those if I can. If you can't, you can't. But so the further over there I get, the better. And that means I'm going to want to set up a little deeper over here so that I start cutting shallow here, and that's going to give me a straighter line into that one. So once we drop here, we do a circle, and then we're coming out. Now coming out, it's a nice straight clean shot, but here was where it was screwing me. And again, this is why coming early is beneficial. I can experiment with this over and over and over. And what I was finding was I would come out of this section and boom, I'm heading right into that section. Well, I think you can see that line's going to be tricky. You can see I'm going to hit this entry cone and that far entry cone, and that's exactly what I was doing. So I needed to go further over at an angle like this. Well, okay, this looks pretty good. I can do a little jog. I was still clipping stuff. So now what I do, when I come out of this thing, I say, all right, screw it. I'm going to exaggerate and come in there more straight into that next pattern. Well, okay, that means I'm going to push myself much further this way. Well, great. Now that means once I get here, I'm just going to throttle out of here hard. So I'm driving out of this pattern, nice and straight in line with these cones, and it's forcing my bike to go wide. But it's also saving me the time I'm losing by having to take a wide line, because I'm really, instead of just carrying a nice arc through there, I'm just straightening the bike up and drag racing out of that thing. Now I'm slowing down, hammering my lean angle, and once I'm sorted from my little drag race exercise there, I'm about here. And this is fine, this is safe. I can get through here nice and clean. The way this pattern goes, you come through here, you got to run all the way down around those 3 greens, figure 8, come around here, run all the way down around those 3, figure 8, and then you're out. And the only thing that's really going to bite you here, or has been biting me, is the entrance in here. So now, instead of trying to take a line that puts me somewhere here, I'm taking a line that's putting me somewhere here. And yes, that means I have to make a more exaggerated movement once I get in here. But guess what? No longer does my brain have to worry about, don't hit a cone, don't hit a cone, don't hit a cone. Instead, I just say, okay, we're almost done with this section, full throttle. Not probably full throttle. My ego says full throttle. It's probably a quarter throttle, but blast out of there, because it's just quick and easy, and it solves 2 problems. It keeps me moving fast, and it gives me a better line because it pushes me wide. So it gives me a better line into here. Mental math is done, finished. So now once I come around here, again, check this out. You're drag racing into the next pattern. Look at all that room I have. So I talk about, I just made a video about clutch efficiency, or friction zone efficiency. When we're going from clutch out, friction zone, clutch out, friction zone. We're not bypassing the friction zone to then find the friction zone again, right? So we're not finding it from a clutch disengaged position. We're just here. We're living here and here instead of here, here, find it. Here, here, find it. We don't do that. It's just not as efficient. But you're going to find, as you get more efficient with just clutch out, friction zone, these areas, and this is a pretty big area, but an area like this, we can really let this girl eat, which is fantastic. So we're drag racing into this next pattern. Same thing though, I talk about preloading. The harder I'm going to drive in here, the less weight is on the front end. The less weight that's on the front end as I go straight into a braking and turning movement, the higher my odds of having bad traction. And with the front end not loaded, I'm not getting as good a geometry. So I'm not going to turn as good a radius, and I'm not going to have as much traction. Those things are miserable. I want both of those things, you know. I mean, that's a miserable scenario. So I come in here, load the front end, my butt's off the seat, I'm preloading that front, I get great turning geometry, I'm getting traction, and I'm really working on my braking in here, in the turn. I'm not scrubbing all my speed, setting up my bike, and then turning. Remember, Once you do it that way and you come in here with no brakes and you've already set your speed, your geometry is just straight up and down and flat. That's great, it'll turn pretty good, but I'm going to turn much tighter, and tighter radiuses mean quicker stopwatch time. So, and it means I have better traction than you. Huge benefits. So you come through here, this is a very tight spot. So when you finish this up, so I was just trying to cut this thing before, I was just trying to cut this thing right in here. The problem was twofold. One, it still wasn't really giving me enough room to get through there regularly and cleanly without clipping that cone, because I have to make a counterclockwise through there. But what I was also doing is, the further here and here I went, the odds began to increase that I was clipping this as I was passing it. So now I drop in here, make my circle. Now I'm making a little jog, and I'm basically steering for this spot. Again, it's the 11 o'clock spot. If you remember back there, I was in the head and shoulders, I'm at the 2 o'clock spot. Well, it's the same spot, I'm just going a different direction. So it's that spot that puts me pretty good this way, pretty good that way. And what's it doing? It's giving me enough time and space to put myself in a decent spot over here. And I can't necessarily fly through here just without worrying about it. But I'll sometimes stand the bike just a little bit, and if I'm just even mildly careful, I don't clip that cone. And I'd say 8 out of 10 people that go through here are clipping that cone. I was knocking it over regularly. This is just a circle, not a big deal. When you come out of here, you're going straight into this spot. I haven't found one way or another that there's a spot I really want to be. Obviously I want to come out of here, but naturally you can do this 40 times and you're always going to pretty much be in a good spot. So this, I don't do any mental math here. I just get through it comfortably and quickly. And then in here, we're dropping left. This is, excuse me, a BMW. So that is a B, this is an M, and then a W over there. Now here, you have decisions to make, especially when it rains. All this stuff right here, all this crap, miserable, miserable. So a lot of guys are taking this on the inside. The challenge with that is, of course, those outside row of cones. So what I decided to do is, you know what, let's play it safe. I'm going to come in on the outside, but I'm going to drive harder through here. So I'm really hammering the throttle. I'm already on the brakes, leaned over, and I just miss that to the left, and I never have any issues dropping into this next one. And then the same thing, nice and wide, don't get greedy, nice and wide, don't get greedy. Now when I get here, so there's these long delineators, I just want to show you. So once I get here, I'm going into this delineator chute. It's kind of narrow, and as I mentioned with the bases over there before, this was a spot I dropped my bike 2 or 3 times because I got comfortable with the speed and the forces, and I'd blast in there with the same level of intensity, and it was just pushing me deep. As soon as the bike touched the base, I crashed. So I stopped doing that. It's one of those self-correctors. So now what I do is I drive pretty hard in here. I'm still pushing, and I found that really the way this radius works is I'm fine here. So I'm kind of hammering, and then right around here, I'm still carrying pretty good speed, but I don't really try to start slowing until I get about here. This cone can bite you, and so I'm slowed down here, and now I'm careful for the rest of this spot. But I found that I can push into it and then just carry a nice safe speed and effectively stand the motor, so, you know, as I'm going through it, less and less lean angle, which makes this safer and safer and safer. Then when I go through here, this is a figure 8 pattern. There's just really no care as far as setup. And then I'm driving up here. These are just quick squirts. And again, we talk about friction zone efficiency. This is exactly the pattern where you should be using something like that if you want to just squirt some extra speed. So right here, just in this little chute here, my clutch is out, just really snappy, it's out, but right here I'm in the friction zone, and then right here I'm just squirting right to there. It's a short distance, it's, I don't know, 20 feet. Clutch is all the way out, whoo, bike's moving right here, and then right here, friction zone. So I've only effectively got my throttle out. I mean, my throttle's on, but my clutch out from probably here to here. The rest is friction zone into this spot and friction zone out of this spot. So that's probably 10 or 12 feet. So for 10 or 12 feet is where I'm letting that girl eat, and then I'm back to the friction zone. So that's gonna squirt me a foot or two ahead of you, maybe a foot. Okay, I beat you by a foot. That's a win. I'll take it. So now I drop in here, friction zone really quick, same thing. Let that girl eat, let the clutch out, boom, clutch is out, and then somewhere right about here, friction zone. Because the other thing that I say is, we don't want to add lean angle to our motorcycle unless we're in the friction zone. Why? Because that's one of those things we have an opportunity to get set before we need it. That way you won't have that scary roller coaster feeling, okay? And when we're dropping into a turning movement, we're thinking about body position, head and eyes, wheel position. There's a lot going on. Friction zone is a more complicated piece of all those things. So if I can get those things done in these little straightaway areas before I need the friction zone when the bike's leaned over, I'll take advantage. That's why it's so critical for you to work on clutches out, friction zone, because I want that friction zone right here before I drop in. Yes, this is a fast pattern. I could probably coast through this whole thing, but as you know, that's just going to bite you, and it's a bad habit when you need to start making rapid transitions or things slow down a lot more than you realize. You're going to drop your bike. So clutch out, friction zone, clutch out, and then right somewhere in here, I'm starting to drop in, friction zone is set. I make a full circle around there, clutch out again, and I'm driving out into the finish line box. And the deal with the box is you got to come in, lady's choice, left or right foot down. If you cross this line at all, even by an inch, 10-second penalty. Pretty harsh. So that's what's going on in my little brain when I run these things. So there, thanks for coming with me. That's just a walkthrough, and I want to point out again, I've been here for over an hour and I'm still the only one here. So we're gonna ride some more, we're gonna burn some gas, and we're gonna sleep tomorrow. How's that sound?